Breaking tonight, a delegate-by-delegate fight breaking out, unlike any we have seen in modern history, as the Republican presidential hopefuls try to reach the magic number of 1237 to win the nomination outright or prevent their rivals from doing so in order to force a floor fight at July's convention. Welcome to the Kelly File, everyone. I'm Megyn Kelly. Over the past week, Senator Ted Cruz has been on a roll, capitalizing on his well-organized campaign to grab a majority of delegates in North Dakota, Wisconsin, and now Colorado, where some 37 delegates in all are up for grabs. Colorado has a very complex selection process that culminates this weekend. It's like you got to date Colorado, you got to take it out for several drinks, and then finally we'll get to the weekend, we'll see what happens. So far, Ted Cruz has managed to secure 21 of that state's delegates. Donald Trump and John Kasich have been shut out, so far denied. But 13 more delegates will be awarded tomorrow. And this is just the beginning of a very complicated path that takes us through the remaining contests over the next 2 months. For more on this, our chief explainer, our chief Washington correspondent, James Rosen. James?
Megyn, if your head doesn't hurt by the time this segment's over, then I haven't done my job. Consider that when New York's mostly lonely Republicans hold their primary April 19, 81 of the 95 delegates up for grabs will reflect the results in the Empire State's 27 congressional districts, 3 delegates per district. Clear 50% in a district and you get all 3 of its delegates. Otherwise, it's 2 for the top finisher, 1 for the runner-up. Of the remaining 14 delegates, 11 will be elected at a state committee meeting May 24. Capture more than 50% of that vote and you sweep all 14 delegates. If no candidate meets that threshold, the delegates get doled out proportionally. So far, most analysts agree Ted Cruz has developed the superior organization for cultivating delegates at the county and district levels.
So he really doesn't have to convince the entire state of New York to support him. He believes that Donald Trump will win, but he does think he can win over district by district and prevent Trump from getting the nomination that way.
The first of the 2 remaining Super Tuesdays comes a week later on April 26, when voters cast ballots in Connecticut, Delaware, Maryland, Pennsylvania, and Rhode Island. That's 172 delegates, all awarded in the same winner-take-most formula as New York. June 7 brings the final Super Tuesday with contests in New Jersey, California, Montana, New Mexico, and North Dakota. That's 302 delegates up for grabs, all awarded, you guessed it, via winner-take-most formulas.
The parties are public-private associations, and they have their own rule books. And when an election is very close in the nominating process, those rule books matter more than the primary results.
An open question in all of this is what happens if and when these delegates in a contested convention become unbound. Are they really free agents, or will they look to their own district and party chairs or members of Congress and governors for guidance on how to vote? Megyn.
Yep, the head hurts. Thanks, James. Ted Cruz may be on a winning streak this week, but Donald Trump's new numbers, his new numbers man, says this is going to be short-lived for Cruz. Watch.
By the time we get to California, the momentum is going to be very clear, and Ted Cruz's path to victory is going to be in shambles.
Chris Stirewalt is our Fox News digital politics editor. Tucker Carlson is editor-in-chief of the Daily Caller and co-host of Fox and Friends. And no, Stirewalt and I did not plan this, but aren't we adorable? And Tucker's got the little pink stripes, too. Like a little Easter egg.
We think alike.
Great to see you. Okay. I don't know. I have no idea what's happening in Colorado. It's very weird. But basically, Ted Cruz is winning the weird system in Colorado right now, Stirewalt.
Look, nobody cared about this. This is always how it's been. Nobody cared about this stuff before because guess what? In the modern era, we've never been paying attention.
Same thing with New York. We're not used to being wooed. Who the heck wants to woo New Yorkers?
Right. It's not. You're not like your Colorado 3 dates and drinks, and then we'll see what happens on the weekend. No. In New York, normally it's just like, hey, whatever, make it happen. but we now. I've had to learn about all Arvada County, Colorado, Republican head counts and all this stuff. And it's because we're going deeper and later than we ever have. And here's another thing. We are going to Tucker's country. We're going to California. This thing's going all the way to June. So I'm going to have to learn a lot more, and I'm kind of bummed.
Just when I thought you knew everything. Tucker, the reason we're getting into this like mind-numbing stuff is that there are 2 contests right now. Yeah. It's the vote. It's the push to win the votes of the people
Yes.
and the push to win the votes of the delegates. And I think most Americans didn't quite realize that there was Avenue B at all.
No, because as Chris said, they didn't have to. It's like the 2000 recount. The closeness has laid bare the details of the process, and the closer you get, the uglier and more corrupt and flaky it looks. It's dispiriting, actually. This is something that you take for granted. Our democracy works. But again, the details are not something the average person has seen or really wants to see. Right. All of this, though, becomes moot if neither candidate gets to the majority of delegates, because after the first ballot, the delegates have an awful lot of latitude as to who they vote for. And it's at that point that what becomes most important are the poll numbers. The sense that, as conveyed to the delegates, that one of these candidates can win in the fall. And so that's really, it's important, I think, for the Trump people to hire an adult with relevant experience. They did that with Paul Manafort. There are not too many on that campaign, so it's a good thing. But in the end, what they really need to do is make the case about electability. That will win delegates much more than any machinations inside the hall, I would predict.
So now, Chris, what Trump needs to do is what he's been doing, winning contests with the people.
Right.
But he's got to work these delegates too, to shore them up, to win them the way that Cruz is winning them, sort of on these delegate slates where people vote for them, and it's like, it's so you don't want to know, but basically you can win them without even involving the people, and then shoring them up before he gets to Cleveland in July to say, vote for me, and you better stick with me, and we can come down to Mar-a-Lago if you do. This is legal. We just had a former, was it James Baker? Somebody was talking about this on CNN, saying totally legal. You can woo them a little.
You can woo them a little, and you can take them to dinner, and you can do whatever you want. Look, here's the deal. The deal is, if Donald Trump doesn't win this on the first ballot, he ain't winning. So all this talk about, well, when the delegates unbind and all that stuff, well, it's not going to be Donald Trump. If he's going to win, he's got to get to 1237 on the first ballot. It's going to be hard for him to get to the real number, but he will be close enough. He could be close enough if that the unbound delegates who are out there, there are hundreds of them, that could come over and put him over the top. That's what he needs to do and win on the first ballot. Because if he doesn't, his delegates will abandon him, because many of them, probably hundreds of them, will be party loyalists who are delegates anyway, but they're not there to love him.
But that leads to the next question, Tucker, and the final one, which is, what does Trump need to do on those electability polls to put the pressure on these people to say, you may not like me, but I'm the only one who can beat Hillary Clinton. He's got to make that argument that Cruz cannot do it.
If the Cleveland convention were held today, I think Chris would be absolutely right, and he might be right. But Trump needs to make the case. First, he needs to clean up the campaign and refocus it and make it about voters and not himself. But second, he needs to say, look, how many Republican voters or any voters who didn't vote for Mitt Romney in 2012 are now going to vote for Ted Cruz if he's the nominee? It's a very small number, and he can say, I can excite these people. He can make a case. But the third factor to consider is this is the most dynamic and volatile year of any of our lifetimes on the set right now. And so you don't really know what America's going to look like 3 months from now. I mean, there could be other crises that unfold that might benefit Trump. I mean, I think it's hard to project out and imagine tomorrow's a pure extrapolation from today. If there was any year where that's not true, this is the year.
Great to see you.
Great to see you.
You bet.
So Senator Cruz's relative successes in Colorado and beyond are prompting a series of reports suggesting that there may be disorganization inside of Team Trump. Politico declared Monday Trump campaign in disarray. And this Wednesday from NBC, infighting, frustration, rile Trump's team, say sources. Today, the Washington Post saying Donald Trump's terrible night in Colorado exemplifies his campaign's Achilles heel. But is that true? Joining me now, Katrina Pearson, national spokesperson for the Trump campaign, and Rich Lowry, who's a Fox News contributor and editor at National Review. Good to see you both. So, Katrina, the media, they love these stories. We saw this 4 years ago, saw it 4 years before. Any sort of campaign shuffle or shakeup of any sort, it's like, they're falling apart. So you tell me whether that is real or that is wishful thinking by the publications we just listed.
It is completely wishful thinking. The rumors of the Trump campaign demise are greatly exaggerated. What we are seeing is the party apparatus in these states, which is how the delegates are chosen, and you just went through that entire discussion. Mr. Trump has won 21 states. Senator Cruz has won 9. We won 7 of Senator Cruz's states that he was supposed to win. But yet there's this magical ground game that we're talking about because Cruz is racking up delegates. And the reason for that simply is this delegate system is an extension of the state Republican Party. Therefore, maybe get beyond the peak level or even the congressional district. He is working with the establishment, and that's how he's getting those delegates.
Everything she just said is right. Is it not, Rich? I mean, that is all true, is it not?
Yeah, and I think anyone who's writing Trump's political obituary is making a huge mistake. A big win in New York, a big win in California. He picks off a few unexpected states in between. He could get to 1237, above 1237, and all this is kind of academic. But it is true the Trump campaign wasn't built for this. It was basically built as a media operation with Donald Trump going from phone interview to phone interview, and that worked brilliantly, much better than anyone would have expected. But now we may really be getting into this granular delegate by delegate fight, and Ted Cruz is built for that because, and there's nothing corrupt about it or establishment about it. It's just that his campaign is a grassroots campaign that depends on organizing. This is what it's been from the beginning, and if he wins the nomination, that's what it's going to be at the end.
The Republican Party, for all of its history, has given power to these delegates. It's just we haven't really paid any attention to it. Katrina, let me ask you, because there were also reports that Donald Trump he's taken a few days and he's not as much on Twitter, and he's kind of thinking about things, and he brought in this guy Manafort, who everybody says is very good. Is there a shift happening here, or what is happening?
Well, there's an expansion that's happening here, and if it were true, what Rich said is that he has this masterful, that Ted Cruz has this masterful ground game, he would have won those 7 states that Donald Trump won. So it's simply not true. The Trump campaign is focused, and as Mr. Manafort said earlier today on an interview, every campaign has a turning point when it's time to focus on something else. Megyn, you have to remember, when this first began in June and Mr. Trump shot to the top, it was very much he was very much the guy to beat. Now we have the GOP establishment joining with some conservatives who supposedly wanted to fight the establishment, and we have this anti-Trump movement. On top of that, we have the GOP literally telling everyone, we are not going to let the people choose our nominee. So of course Mr. Trump brings in someone that specializes in the convention process, because again, this is a party apparatus. They've already publicized the fact that they don't want Trump or Cruz. So if Cruz wants to allow himself to be that Trojan horse at the convention, go right ahead. But we are confident that we are going to get those delegates by the time we get there.
What do you think of that, Rich? Is there a chance, a realistic chance that Trump is going to get that 1237 number before or as of June 7th, which is the very last day that they vote?
There's some quite realistic chance. I'd say 30% chance or so. But if it goes to a convention, the rule is you have to get a majority of delegates, and there's a reason for that rule. It's very basic. That's the minimum requirement for showing you have a consensus of the party. And if no one gets there, then the role of the delegates comes in. And
but let me just say, if you're looking for consensus, and you get to the second ballot and still somebody, who we just saw, one of those 3 guys doesn't get it, and they do parachute in a 3rd person, I guess a 4th person, because Kasich's up there too. That's not a consensus candidate.
Yeah, well, I think that scenario is very unlikely, and I would counsel against it. But the paradox and I want to underline a point that Tucker made. The general election polls are very important, because the paradox of Trump is he's rocketed to frontrunner status in the Republican nomination battle. At the same time, he has made himself toxic with the general public. Nearly 70% disapproval rating in this AP poll this week. Donald Trump loves to talk about polls. There's a reason he's not talking about general election polls very much recently. Also in that AP poll, 30% of Republicans say they wouldn't vote for Donald Trump in the fall. That is a party heading to a debacle. And there's no way delegates, if they have a major role at this convention, are going to forge a suicide pact with Donald Trump for the fall.
In that same poll, Megyn, in that same poll, Ted Cruz is at 60% unfavorable, and Hillary Clinton's only 5 points down from Trump. There have been many elections in the past where the front runner at this point in time was 20 to 25 points behind.
I think it's Donald Trump's at 69% unfavorable. Ted Cruz is at 59% unfavorable, and Hillary Clinton is down at 55% unfavorable. So you pick your poison, American people. Thank you both so much for being here.
Thanks so much.
So one political analyst has come up with 5 possible outcomes at the GOP convention. They are easy to understand. Look, we even did a fancy graphic. And coming up, we're going to give you the odds on which of these 5 outcomes is the most likely. Plus, with another contentious week on the campaign trail coming to a close, Mark McKinnon, one of the creators of the Showtime hit The Circus, is back again with some of the key moments you didn't see but should.
Wisconsin would be the last best chance for the challengers to make a play.
Someone but Trump or Clinton has to win here, or
it's over.
It's all but over.
It's all but over.
I think there's a very good chance Cruz will win and maybe win big here.
Well, Showtime's popular series, The Circus, has been giving viewers a front row seat to the 2016 presidential campaign. Now the show's producers are hitting the pause button to reflect on how we got to this point. And one of their key moments involves the run-up to this week's primary in Wisconsin. Watch this.
I'm getting tired of you guys.
This state's just got a tradition of politics all over the place. You've got really conservative Tea Party movement here, and then you have, of course, labor unions, a huge part of the politics of this state.
That's a pretty rich history. 1960, John F. Kennedy runs against Humphrey. Kennedy had lost the 60 primary in Wisconsin. Probably wouldn't have been the Democratic nominee.
Wisconsin would be the last best chance for the challengers to make a play.
Someone but Trump or Clinton has to win here, or
it's over.
It's all but over.
It's all but over.
I think there's a very good chance Cruz will win and maybe win big here. Any state that has any sort of retail campaigning
and capacity to organize,
where you really have to do something strategic, Cruz outruns him.
Kasich doesn't really think he could win the primary. John Kasich is now in the delegate accumulation business.
That's right.
He is not in the winning state business.
This is a game of checkers, and he's trying to play chess, but
Bernie Sanders fans think that we have all buried Bernie Sanders too early. They are constantly howling, you in the media who say this race is over, including some people at this table. I'm talking about me. They've basically been saying, look, this race is still alive, and we're going to show you how alive it is right here in Wisconsin.
They might be right.
If Trump and Clinton both get beat here, it blows up the narrative of this race is all but done. You take the fork that was in the race like this, and you pull the fork out of the race like that.
Joining me now, Mark McKinnon, co-creator of The Circus and former chief media advisor to President George W. Bush. Good to see you, Mark. So you guys are always eating and drinking in these clips. It looks pretty fun out there on the road. I don't know why we're feeling sorry for you guys on the road all the time. Martinis and steaks. And that moment is pretty interesting because earlier in The Circus, he had stuck the knife into the steak, saying this race is over. And now he's saying,
right.
No, this race is not over on either side.
Yeah. John stuck a fork in it a couple of weeks ago, and last week he pulled the fork out of it. I mean, the biggest prediction that we made that was wrong was at the very beginning when we budgeted the show and we had 24 episodes, and we said we have to save some for the summer and some for the fall, so let's just do 10 for the spring. We ended up extending it 12, but it's still not resolved. And it could go all the way to the convention. But we got to hit the pause button, as you said, and we'll be back up for the summer for the convention and then back up for the general election in the fall. But it's been a really exciting, dramatic race, and it may just continue to be that way.
Why was the estimate so off? I mean, because Trump lost Wisconsin and Hillary lost Wisconsin? Because, Trump, he lost Wisconsin. It was a setback, but he's got New York right around the corner.
Well, it was so off because we looked at it historically, and a year ago when we planned this thing, we said, the probably wrapped up after Super Tuesday.
No, but I mean the prediction that it's done.
Trends.
The prediction that it's done. That when he was saying that the race is over.
Yeah, well, I mean, first of all, you look at the delegates and the superdelegates on the Democratic side, and all those superdelegates are really likely to go to Clinton. I mean, there's this, convenient theory put forward by the Sanders people that when it gets down to, if the delegate count is close, that those superdelegates will look at polls and say, well, perhaps Sanders is better general election candidate, stronger, that they might switch. The fact is that those superdelegates are really dedicated, longtime loyalists to Clinton and very unlikely to switch. And, a couple of weeks ago, it looked like Trump was having a pretty good run and at least would, on a traditional path, it would win New York, win California, that he would likely get pretty close to the majority of delegates needed.
That's her ace in the hole, those superdelegates. Because even if Bernie gets very close to her in the delegates you get from winning the races, she too has this ace in the hole. She sort of has what Cruz has, which is things that are available not via the will of the people.
Well, that's right. And these superdelegates, they go back decades with the Clintons. 95% of them are people that worked with the Clintons in the 72 McGovern campaign. I mean, it just goes back forever. So they're deeply loyal to the Clintons, and it's just unlikely under any scenario that they would come unglued and go with Sanders at some point in the race. So those superdelegates are a big thing in the pocket of the Clinton campaign.
It's amazing.
Not to be underestimated.
It's amazing how that race keeps going, and he's got a lot of money in the coffers, Bernie Sanders does, and is not...
$44 million just in the last month. Amazing.
I can't put it the way you put it in your clip, but he had a message, yeah, for the
He's got the
MFers
passion,
in the media.
he's got the burn.
Mark, it's great to see you.
Thanks for having us on.
Well, with a contested convention looking more and more likely tonight, one political analyst has come up with 5 possible outcomes at the GOP convention. They are easy to understand. And coming up, we will give you the odds on which one is most likely. Breaking tonight, the Republican race to the nomination may be more complicated than we've seen in years. But this week, a veteran political scientist by the name of Norm Ornstein posted a piece of analysis at The Atlantic, offering 5 possible outcomes on how the Republican race could end. Convention expert Tom Bevan will give us his odds on each scenario in a moment. But first, we go to Trace Gallagher, who has the breakdown on what to expect. Trace?
Megan, regardless of how the nomination process ends, we know for sure that it won't end until at least June 7th, the day of the last GOP contest. There is no realistic way for any candidate to get to 1,237 delegates before then. And the truth is, unless something miraculous happens, only Donald Trump has a path to actually hit 1,237. So the first scenario is very simple. Donald Trump goes on a roll, hits the magic number on June 7th, and becomes the nominee. The second scenario would be that Donald Trump falls short of 1,237, but in the 45 days between the last primary and the start of the convention, Trump is somehow able to gather up enough unbound delegates to push him over the top. But that would mean the GOP establishment would have to coalesce around Donald Trump in the hope of avoiding a contested convention. Scenario 3 is the one Ted Cruz is hoping for, and that's a contested convention where Donald Trump loses on the first ballot and then delegates become unbound. And because the Cruz campaign has been very effective at going state to state courting those delegates, on the second ballot they dump Trump, climb on board with Cruz, and make him the nominee. That might please some of the GOP establishment like Lindsey Graham, Jeb Bush, and Mitt Romney, but it would infuriate Trump supporters, which could lead to chaos in Cleveland. Scenario 4 goes like this. GOP party leaders decide to propose new rules, allowing other candidates into the mix, maybe paving the way for someone like Paul Ryan. But in that scenario, Trump and Cruz could fight back by creating an alliance and pooling their delegates, even setting up a Trump-Cruz ticket. Scenario 5 we could call the Karl Rove scenario, looking for a fresh face on the presidential ballot. Listen.
If it's somebody who has, has those convictions that they can express in a compelling way, we could come out of the convention in relatively strong position.
And the idea there is to stop the bleeding, to find someone who may not beat Hillary Clinton, but would at least get Republicans to show up and vote to maintain control of the House and Senate. If you think Cleveland rocks now, boy, wait till July.
Wow. Very clear. Thank you, Trace. Well, many possibilities, but there will only be one outcome. Joining me now, Tom Bevan. He's the co-founder of RealClearPolitics.com, favorite website, by the way, and he's going to tell us which one of these is actually going to happen. So which is it?
I don't know, Megan. Nobody knows. Look, I think if you look at scenario number 1, I'd rate that about 25%, 1 in 4 chance that Trump actually gets that he wins outright. And that will become a lot clearer after New York here in about 11 days. If he can stay above 50% and sweep up a lot of those delegates, that'll boost him moving into those other East Coast primaries. And the other state to watch, incidentally, is Indiana. That's a big one that's being sort of overlooked. If Trump can win in Indiana, that'll set him up for pretty good position in California, and in that case, he probably would get there, but he's not going to get there by much. If he gets there, it's going to be just by a few delegates. It's
going to come down to June 7th at best for these candidates. Nobody's getting this nomination before June 7th at the earliest.
That's right. And so if you look at scenario number 2, where Trump comes up short, I would give that about
so scenario
a little bit
2
higher
is we get to June 7th, all the voting's done, and Trump is the leader, but he doesn't have 1,237. So how does he, quote, make up the difference between June 7th and the convention in late July?
Well, he's going to have to woo these delegates, like Steyerwalt was saying earlier. We're going to take him out to dinner. He's going to backroom deal with them.
Which ones?
he says he's a deal maker. He's going to have to prove it, and he's hired a guy in Paul Manafort that's his expertise.
Which ones
is to
do
find
they
these
go
delegates.
to? The ones who are not bound, who are going to the convention out of various states, but they're not pledged. So it's like, I don't have a
That's
partner.
right.
I'm available. I like Mar-a-Lago.
That's right.
Right? That's how it works.
Yes, exactly. They're free agents. That's exactly right. And again, it's going to matter how close he gets to the number. And I would use 1,200 as sort of a break-even point. If he gets to 1,200, he could probably get there. If he's under 1,200, I think it's going to be a lot harder. And it's going to also depend on how he finishes off. If he's got momentum heading into California and beyond California, I think it'll be a lot easier for him to sweep up some of these delegates. If he stumbles, finishes with a whimper, it's going to be a little bit harder for him.
So we understand how it happens that, Cruz would win on the second ballot and all that. But what about this other scenario where Trump and Cruz unite to give the establishment one of these, if the establishment, right, whoever the establishment is, just go with it, wants to pilot in a third-party candidate? Do you think there's any chance these two men actually wind up combining for a president-vice president combo?
It seems unlikely, but, look, we've had stranger bedfellows. I mean, JFK despised Lyndon Johnson, ended up with him on the ticket, so we've seen stuff like this happen in the past. Trace mentioned the rules, but imagine this, Megan. So Trump, I agree, he's either gets it on the first ballot or he's done. Cruz is going to have his chance to flex his delegate muscles if he can get it on the second ballot. If he gets denied on the second ballot, then he might be done. The longer this goes on, the more ballots that go, the more pressure is going to be on these delegates to find a compromise candidate. So the worse it's going to get. Trump and Cruz may end up on the outside looking in. So maybe perhaps on the third delegate, Cruz goes to Trump and says, hey, let's pool our delegates. We combine unified ticket. And suddenly that's how I think there's small chance of that, maybe 10%, but it is definitely something that could happen.
We got to eat our Wheaties in the month of July. Getting ready for that thing. Tom, great to see you. Very clear. Thank you.
Thanks, Megan.
Well, President Bill Clinton was doing a little damage control today after he went head-to-head with protesters from the Black Lives Matter movement yesterday. We showed this to you. Robert Zimmerman and Ebony Williams are next on what this means for President Clinton and for his wife, who would like to be President Clinton. Hi. New fallout for the Clinton campaign today after President Bill Clinton's dust-up with a group of Black Lives Matter protesters created some unwanted heartburn, as opposed to the wanted heartburn, for his wife's campaign. Watch this.
I don't know how you would characterize the gang leaders who got 13-year-old kids hopped up on crack and sent them out onto the street to murder other African-American children. Maybe you thought they were good citizens. She didn't. She didn't. You are defending the people who kill the lives you say matter. Tell the truth.
And while many have argued that President Clinton was making valid points, the former president came just inches away from apologizing today.
So, I did something yesterday in Philadelphia I almost want to apologize for, but I want to use it as an example of the danger threatening our country. I rather vigorously defended my wife, as I'm wont to do, and I realized finally I was talking past her the way she was talking past me. We got to stop that in this country. We got to listen to each other again.
The question now, as Vanity Fair summed up in this headline, is whether President Clinton is losing his political mojo. Robert Zimmerman is a DNC committee member and Clinton supporter. Ebony Williams is a Fox News contributor. Good to see you both.
Good to be with you.
So that was, I mean, did the campaign take him behind the woodshed and say, Mr. President, not helpful?
Never works that way. Not with Bill Clinton, certainly, and very frankly.
But his wife could do it.
You know something? What they discuss amongst themselves, I'm not privy to. But the bottom line is that was a real, authentic moment. Mm-hmm. And we always talk about wanting to see our political leaders unscripted and just being candid, and that's what it was.
He was fiery. He was fiery. But is it politically risky?
You know something? I don't think for a moment. Let's remember the crime bill that he's talking about was supported by half of the Black Congressional Caucus, by many African-American clergy. It was dealing with a real crime crisis in America. One of the unintended consequences was mass incarceration. Hillary Clinton's acknowledged that, and she's tried to address it in this campaign. So is Bill Clinton, for that matter. Mm. But I think having those kinds of unscripted, candid moments, I think, is very good for the system and good for our debate.
Is there an opportunity here, do you think, for Bernie Sanders to make inroads with Black Democratic voters? Because the assumption going into this race was Hillary Clinton's got those folks locked up. That they love Bill Clinton, they'll probably love her too.
Absolutely, Megan. Look, here's the issue. I agree there was a moment of truth and certainly honesty, to Robert's point, in what we saw from Bill Clinton. But for many in the black community, Megan, they feel like there is at best a conflict, because last summer at the NAACP convention, President Clinton said, you know what, the scope was maybe indeed too broad. Too many black people were incarcerated in for too long. So then to hear him kind of backpedaling now, it does seem inconsistent at best. Here's the other issue, politically very risky, because black voters have probably been the most consistent voter base for Hillary Clinton. The South, she absolutely does have that firewall that she spoke of. That's a place Bernie Sanders has not been able to permeate. And so indeed, if he's able to get even a little bit of that part of the electorate, that can make a big difference for him.
We're waiting to see the New York vote, right? And this is her adopted home state. What did you make of, I mean, we actually ran a report on how many times she swiped the Metro card. And how it should have been easier, and then she went on the subway and maybe she violated rules. It got a lot of press, is the point.
Of course.
So, and people said she didn't look real, because we all know she doesn't take the subway, Robert. We all know that.
Look,
why does she have to pretend she takes it?
I've had difficulty with my Metro card too.
Me too. I said that last night.
Okay.
I don't know why.
No,
It's so easy if you
the first time.
Look, here's the point. In the scrutiny of a presidential campaign, you've got political pundits with too much time on their hands. So they're going to obsess about the Metro card and make that an issue.
She is the one who went on the subway like she is woman of the people, which she may be, but she doesn't have to ride the subway falsely to tell us that.
Did you see Ted Cruz try to make matzah yesterday?
Well, there's problems on both sides.
Exactly. I mean,
Here's the question, though, Robert, right? I mean, I think we all know, because when she came out of the White House, they were talking about how they were broke, and I think for most Americans that felt a bit inauthentic and maybe even offensive. Maybe just be okay with who you are and your stature and how far you've come, and maybe people can palate that a little better.
And she came out and said, I don't take the subway. I haven't taken the subway in years. You know
I've been First Lady. I was the Secretary of State.
This is one of the fringe benefits of being me.
By the way, then you'd have political pundits talking about her not being in touch. The bottom line is, if she wasn't authentic, she wasn't herself, she wouldn't have been elected to the Senate from New York. She wouldn't have been reelected. This is a pretty tough, scrutinizing state of New York.
How about Bernie Sanders saying, I've used the token?
I was going to say, that's the issue, right? So every
you can't use the token anymore.
You want, you want to say Bernie has an opening, right? Or there's an opportunity here. He also voted for the 1994
That's
crime
right.
bill.
That's right.
So, they really are two sides of the same coin, rather. And so it's really tough for many in the people community, so to speak, to identify with either on some level.
As I said earlier, pick your poison. Gotta go. Great to see you both.
I agree.
Coming up, wait until you see how some students want the girl behind this pro-Trump post punished. That's a lot of alliteration. We will bring you the latest dispatch from Cupcake Nation next.
See you all, and this is what it looks like to actually get in the way of what white supremacy.
Another dispatch from Cupcake Nation tonight, as student protesters at a university in Portland descend on a pro-Trump meeting organized by their peers, not to engage in a debate, but rather to silence the pro-Trump students for holding political views other than their own. It happens all the time. Trace Gallagher live in our West Coast newsroom with the story. Trace?
Megan, the meeting at Portland State was standing room only, filled with both Trump supporters and protesters. It was raucous, contentious, bordering on ferocious. They were able to hold their fist, but their voices ran unfiltered. Watch.
You shut up.
Go to the Students Against Trump meeting.
Can't stop the Trump. Can't stop the Trump.
Amid the F-bombs and insults, there were some short-lived pockets of calm, even brief moments of rational dialogue. Watch again.
I don't see why it's fair to let other people who we have no idea who they are, they could be criminals, they could be anything, just waltz through the country with no sort of repercussion or anything like that.
What he has made very clear, though, is that he hates Mexicans, he hates Muslim people.
Citation needed!
Well,
why don't you start Students Against Trump?
But in the end, those who support Donald Trump felt drowned out by those who don't. And though the meeting was never officially adjourned, students for Trump steadily left the building, which emboldened the protesters. Listen.
If you do this, we're coming back.
Later on social, Wynn did poorly on the protesters. Megan.
Trace, thank you. Well, the attack on political speech also hitting the University of Tennessee Chattanooga this week as Haley Puckett, a newly elected student senator, joined friends in chalking pro-Trump art and messages on campus. Now, peers claim she is not fit to represent them in the student senate, and they are demanding that she resign from her student government post. Haley Puckett has a response for those critics, and she joins me now. Haley, how you doing? So you decided to go down with some friends to the sidewalk and to express your support for Donald Trump. How? Explain what you wrote.
Well, we went down to Heritage Plaza, and they had already started working on the artwork, and they wrote Trump 2016 and drew a hat with Make America Great Again. And then my friends drew a wall right underneath the artwork. So.
And what was the first whiff you got that this was wrong, from according to your peers?
Well, I put it on Twitter, and after about 26 minutes, a bunch of people just started tweeting at me and very harsh and threatening things. So I was just like, I'll just take it down, because if it's hurting that many people, I'll just take it down. So I did.
Why can't you have your point of view that you like Donald Trump and are in favor of a wall to protect the southern border, and they have their view, and everyone gets to express it?
Yeah, that's the same feeling I have. I feel that I don't really question their opinion, so I don't feel like they should have to question mine.
But even if they question your opinion, I mean, I think what we just saw at that other university where they're sort of up there fighting, the dialogue was a little dicey, but at least they're fighting and they're expressing ideas. And your campus, they want you fired. They want you off the student government. Why? Because of the chalk? Because you wrote Make America Great Again with a wall?
Well, everything's been taken a little out of context. They're saying that the wall is about division and that we want unity on campus, but we also want to include everyone. So it's just kind of hard to say that I'm wrong and then also say that you want unity. So it's just...
Haley, why do you like Donald Trump? Why are you supporting him?
Well, I feel like that he can bring up our economy and just help everything about the United States.
We will continue to follow your story. By the way, you going to resign?
No, I'm not going to resign. I was elected by my students in my district, and I feel that if they elect me, then I want to serve them.
Good for you. Thanks for being here tonight.
We'll
be right back.
Thank you so much.
A great day today in New York as Variety magazine hosted its Power of Women New York event. Some well-known faces were recognized for their charitable works, including actresses Lupita Nyong'o, Julianne Moore, fashion designer Vera Wang, and amazing and groundbreaking ballet dancer Misty Copeland. Yours truly was also honored to be there and was given the chance to speak about my favorite charity, Child Help.
Child Help is brave. Yvonne and Sarah are brave. They do not look away. They intervene to prevent the abuse through in-school education programs, trying to show kids what abuse is and how to stop it, what to do if it's happening to them. To stop the abuse with their 24/7 national hotline, 1-800-4-CHILD. Staffed by professional crisis counselors, most of whom have master's degrees and can provide help in 170 languages. To heal the wounds of abuse with recovery centers known as villages, where the most severely abused and neglected children go for love and counseling. But it takes money to help those children, which is where we come in. Imagine being the one whose donation helps a child out of an abusive home and into a facility that greets every boy and girl with the words, "All who enter here will find love."
That number again is 1-800-4-A-CHILD or childhelp.org. Surrounded by powerful women today, we also discussed the concept of fearlessness, a word it seems we're hearing a lot lately about women and girls in particular.
Some have used that word fearless about me, and it's wrong. I am not fearless, nor do I know any fearless people. This seems to be a new standard, a new goal that we are setting for people. Go forth unafraid. You go forth unafraid. I'm scared about a lot, often. Fear is normal. The goal is not to get rid of it. The goal is to walk through it. Courage is what we need. Courage. If you can muster courage in the face of fear, you become more confident. You become tougher. Vanity Fair called me the toughest anchor at Fox. Okay, I'm tough. But I cry, I worry, I have fear, I have self-doubt, I have insecurities, I have cellulite. What? I don't want to lose or fail or embarrass myself any more than the next gal. But I am willing to take the risk of doing all that and more for the chance to make my life sing. To make it sing.
By the summer, I'm going to work on that. I'm going to look like Misty Copeland because I'm going to eat well and I'm going to exercise. Go to Facebook.com/The Kelly File with your thoughts. Follow me on Twitter at Megyn Kelly. Thanks for watching, everyone. This is The Kelly File.